So today marks an end of an era. I'm saying goodbye to my 18-105 Sony F4G lens. So if this is a lens that you've been thinking about getting, in this video I plan to highlight all of my pros and cons and who I think should buy this lens. Let's get into it.
Let me take the friction from your lips. And I'ma love you, girl, the way you need.
In less of a dramatic fashion, this lens has been awesome for me. Well, it was awesome for different reasons. It definitely had its time, but as of late, it's literally been sitting there for the past, since the start, I think, of making this channel. What's going on YouTube? My name is Marvin and I am a photographer and videographer based right out of the UK. On this channel, I like to talk about things that will help your workflow, things that will speed you up, whether that's buying decisions, editing, me showing you how I do things. This is what this channel is intended for. So if you feel that I'd be useful to you at some point, make sure you hit the subscribe button for more future content. Let's start with cons. Let's start with the things that I don't like. Let's start with why it was sitting there for so long. When it comes to professional work, being an f4 lens, as you guys know, I always mention I like to do portrait photography. Sometimes I cover events. With that happening, as you know, in events, a lot of the times you will be in dark places. An f4 lens, just in my opinion, doesn't cut it. In comparison to a 1.8 or a 1.4, you're talking stops of light that you're missing out on, and that can be really important when you want your images to stand out in dark scenes. The sharpness is okay. I would say it's middle of the road. That's what you're generally gonna get with a lens that will be so versatile, I guess. I wouldn't say it's exceedingly sharp. I wouldn't ever say, okay, I'm going to bank on having super sharp images. However, they will most certainly get the job done for 80–90% of work. But you know us creators, we want the best of the best whenever we can get it. A lot of the time, it would never kind of make it or reach my bag. The only times where I can say I did use it and it had a use is when I was doing product photography and I needed to move through different focal ranges. If you've seen some of my images, if you follow me on the gram, then you'll see that I love my subject separation. That's why I got the 70-180. That's why I've got the 24GM. That's why I've got this Sigma 16, and it will probably stick with me even if I go completely full frame. So yeah, I just didn't feel from a portrait perspective it gave me what I needed. If I was doing top body shots, then yeah, maybe it might suffice, seeing as I could zoom all the way into 105, and of course 105 in full frame equivalent is like 163 or something close to that. I'll put it on the screen again. So using a focal length of that equally kind of gives you that separation that you need. However, what people don't talk about, I might be talking a bit too much maths here, but if you've got an f4 aperture on a crop censored lens, it's not you have to make the equivalent to full frame. And when you do that, that f4 is actually like f5.6 or around that figure. I would love to have two bodies where I know I can go to an event, shoot with two different focal lengths, and I'm getting approximately the same amount of light. And this just kind of falls outside of my arsenal. So it's a 72mm thread, which I think now that I own the 24GM and the Tamrons, and a lot of good lenses are 67, I think 72 just kind of spoils it a little bit. Maybe it's just my experience, maybe because I did things like stupidly, didn't know I was new to it, buying an ND filter, thinking, okay, if I get a 72 as my maximum and then I get step up rings, then I'll be fine. And then it turns out that everything that I'd ever need to use an ND filter for, a polarizer, is happily on my 67. So for anyone new to the game, the reason why you wouldn't need an ND filter for this lens is because it doesn't let in a lot of light anyway. So you hardly have to cut out any, if that makes any sense. I also bought like the polarizer for it and stuff like that, which I used a couple of times, but once again, it's probably best suited for lenses that have a much lower aperture. Another downside, I guess this is just a Sony thing, it's not necessarily just for this lens, is the focusing ring. I mean, it is really nice and smooth, However, it is really easily susceptible to movement. My reviews are never very technical, so just bear with me. Let's say you're doing video work and you are trying to manual focus and you think, okay, turning this focus wheel to this point here will get me to that focal range. It all depends on the speed that you're turning it. So you can never get consistent results in focus pulling. So if you're looking for something for video work, yeah, it's just not professional enough, if that makes any sense. Finally, my pet peeve with this lens. When buying it, you would think that it is built really well. Don't get me wrong, durability wise, it's fine. The lens, my lens now is working optimally, it's perfect. It's not got any problems, it's hardly been used. I've managed to put a UV filter in front of it for the whole of its life, so the lens has no problems. However, the amount of little scuffs, little dings and dents, you get a load of them. I've got a little one, just I don't think you'll be able to see it here. I'm so annoyed with myself. I was rushing to get the lens all sorted for the new buyer and I forgot to do a whole load of B-roll sequences and show you guys a little bit more about the lens. But for this, of course, I've shown you some photos already. You're just gonna have to take my word on it. But yeah, let's get back to the video. You've got kind of like this black matted paint that you've got over it. It's easily scratched. And as I mentioned, nothing wrong with the lens optically. It just doesn't look very nice. It doesn't look very appealing. Yes, I understand that it's not a GM lens, and if you went with the GM lens, then you get much better results. But brands like Sigma have been able to create their lenses without any of this. I just think that would have been a nicer touch. So enough of me telling you bad things about the lens. I don't think there's anything else that I'd have a problem with. Focal ranges, some pixel peepers may disagree, but focal ranges to me were all fine. I don't think I had any problems with the lens optically on what it could do. So yeah, let's move on to the pros. Let's move on to the good stuff. First things first, price point. I actually purchased this from John Lewis. John Lewis is usually known to be quite pricey for anything. However, they have good warranties and so forth. So knowing that you can get this lens at a reasonable price, both used and new, is a really good point for you guys who are potentially buying this lens. I did lose a little bit more money, of course, me buying it new than what I did, in example, with my Sony 50mm, and well, I guess that you can't really compare because I bought it used and I sold it used, so it wasn't too bad. As it's affordable, of course, you've got to think about who's going to be buying this lens. This is going to be a step up from the 16-50 kit lens, Sony kit lens. And my God, it is. I accidentally broke my 16-50 because it had no internal zooming. It just popped out a little bit and I accidentally knocked it off a small edge and it killed it. So this has internal zooming. It's got a focal range that mirrors it or is almost the same, making it a great upgrade for new photographers. Yes, on the 16-50, you can get down to 3.5, I believe. However, this is a constant f4. So it doesn't matter if you are going from 18mm all the way up to 105, you're able to keep your aperture point at f4. That's going to help your workflow, that's going to help consistency, that's going to help you start to build a more creative and professional portfolio. It goes all the way up to f22, I believe. If you ever wanted to cut out light and cut out the sun completely in daytime, you can get some really creative looking shots with this lens. You've also got the ability to do everything electronically as well, so you can zoom with this little grip here, which is really nice actually. I would say that's a big selling point for when you're doing video work and stuff like that. Native glass tends to focus better. It's very hard for me to compare because I didn't necessarily do a lot of burst shooting with anything else, but I can't say from a beginner's perspective, I can't say that I was necessarily disappointed in its performance. One last thing, I would say T-stops. Once again, this is going back to video. It seems to let in the right amount of light. When I compare it to my other lenses at f4, it seems to keep up. I'm talking full frame glass as well. It seems to keep up in relation to letting light in. I won't go into too much detail with that. I'll just let you know that I was happy with the results. If you don't know what T-stops are, try and do a little bit of research. Think f-stop is at the front and the aperture. T-stop is at the back and how much light is actually getting given to the sensor. And I feel like it lets the light through pretty well. So now that I'm finished talking about it, I feel like I have spoken a lot about the negatives, and I'm not going to sugarcoat things. It was sitting on my bookshelf thingy majig for a little while. Yeah, like I said, it only came out when I was doing some product photography at home. Who's this lens for? This lens is for creators who want a one lens setup that don't mind necessarily taking a hit on aperture. So yeah, I mean, if you're in the A6000 range, I think this would be great. I think pairing this with one of the A6400, 6600, or any of the ones with the face tracking, I would say that this is probably a good lens for it, because then it takes the focusing perspective out of play and it allows you to really make use of the full kind of the focal range control, if that makes any sense. I use this lens for vlogging. This is why I picked it up. I was just thinking, yo, this is versatile. Kind of like the new Tamron 28 to 200 or whatever. The only difference with that is that I believe it's not constant. Another set of people who I would kind of say to get the lens to are maybe people without a massive budget who want to try out the different focal lengths as well. I think that's also equally important. If you're someone who wants to get into photography or videography and everyone's saying, oh, get this prime lens, get that prime lens, it almost molds you and limits you, which can be good. People always say the grass is greener, right? Sometimes knowing what's on the other side and working with that focal range, you can eliminate that and say, well, no, my work doesn't need that focal range. This will help you get used to that. This will help you understand what you're going to get at those focal ranges. I hope I haven't missed anything out, because I am literally about to pack this lens away and take it to the post office and say goodbye to it forever. However, I am happy with what it's done for me. Although it might have not have been my perfect lens, or one that I'll be thinking I'm going to keep forever, it has definitely allowed me to grow. And if you know that you are about to go along that journey and you want help with your growth, you will not be making a bad decision by buying this lens. And that's the all honest truth. I have no ties to anyone to say that this was a great lens. I understand that when people buy stuff, they also like to big it up and say, yeah, I made the best decision and all that. I'm not saying that any of that with this lens. I'm just saying it will always do better or good for you to have it if you can get it. And then once you're done with it, you can still have the availability or the option to sell it at a reasonable price. I won't give you the exact figures, but I only lost out on about 100 and something pounds. And I think, okay, almost 2 years of work. It's earned me some money. It's built up my portfolio. It's got me some opportunities in some different places. That isn't a bad investment. Some people might need a mid-range and maybe a short or a wide focal length. Some people might just be kind of like mid-range and super telephoto. And a lens like this will help you understand what you want to do and how you want to do it. So with that being said, I hope that this was a useful video to you. If you'd like to know any more information about my time with the lens, make sure you leave it down below in the comments. Hit up that subscribe button and the bell for more future content. If this has helped you make a buying decision, whether you're not gonna go with it or you are, please, please, please hit the like button, and I'll speak to you on my next upload. Peace. This guy's getting a UV filter in there as well. Actually, no, he's not.